Welcome to another episode of Happy Never After, part of P. Frank Network. I am your host, Mara Merrick, 3-time divorcee, 7-time engagement. I need my stats to go up, so this COVID is really holding me down. My other host is sideways on the screen, but you know, she's going to ruin it. So, Joelle Gracie, go for it. How's it going out in the old Omaha? How's your last week there?
It's beautiful today. I'm not sweating just looking outside, so that's positive. The humidity's down a little bit.
Nice. I went and did a workout on the track this morning, and I was like, I got half of the workout in, and I was like, that's good. We're good.
We're good. I'm sweating. That counts.
We have a very special guest on because I'm addicted to TikTok and everybody mocks me for it.
You are.
It's wholesome. It's so wholesome. I found this very interesting doctor. He puts up unusual psychology facts on his TikTok page. He also has a podcast called Doc Talks. Is that right?
That's correct.
Perfect. And welcome to the show, Dr. Brian Sheppard.
Thank you.
Yay. This is what made me very interested. Most of my followers are like badass, like super badass, both male, female, just very strong, empathetic, intuitive people. And I saw this video and I was like, fuck yeah, this explains a lot. So here, let me play it. Holy shit!
Oh, dropping it down.
Coming in hot with some knowledge. Validating my singleness.
You don't know how many attacks I got for that video.
What do you mean attack?
I mean, so first of all, most women that were married felt that I was dissing them because obviously they weren't very smart or educated because they were married. And then other ones were defending their husbands, that my husband didn't marry down and I am better than he is. And I have this and that and that. And I mean, but with, nearly 2 million views, what do you expect? You're going to have the whole gamut of emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to get intense.
Well, we loved it.
Like,
Related.
that's the issue. Because even when I go on dates, I really try to watch the language within the communication and texting prior to. And in my head, I'm like, he's not going to do it for me. He's not going to teach me enough. And I still go on the date. And then halfway through, I'm like, nah.
Climb out the bathroom window.
Thank you for the sandwich.
At least I'm full.
So what do we do?
Well, there's a couple of things that you should do as far as dating. Now, the main thing is, where are you finding these guys at?
On Facebook, personally.
Well, most psychologists would argue that social media, Tinder, Bumble are not the best places to find potential partners, because I think we could all agree that for the most part, when we project things on social media, it's not always the truest form of who we are. You'll meet somebody, and I go back to, my dating goes back to the age of MySpace, and you'll see these pictures of these women, or even the men that have these pictures that are 4 or 5 years old, and they don't look like what they have projected themselves to look like. Which I think there's this TV show called Catfish where they actually, call these people out for it. So the first thing you would do is, where are you finding these guys at?
All of my relationships have come from the gym prior to this, because that's where I work also. That's my day job, is the gym. So, yeah, what about you, Joelle?
I'm guilty of the dating app dating, but I haven't had huge success. Aaron was a good success from there, but I was a bartender, so I would wait on men and kind of get to know them, they would be more of regulars, and the gym too, working out and working at a gym.
DB, where do you find your ladies, or are you in a relationship?
I'm married. It'll be 10 years in December.
Oh my God.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I was actually talking to my mom about doing this podcast today because she's, my best friend. And I said, so they wanted me to kind of tell about a relationship that had failed. And I really don't know that I've had one because I've only dated two women in my entire life. So
You're in whole
Success and success.
But she reminded me of my first relationship and how it went bad. So I'm thankful for that.
Let's get into the dirt. What happened?
So
where'd you meet this hussy?
I was dating
Fifth
this
grade.
girl, and we met at church. So, supposedly everything's okay. And then she just goes crazy. I mean, just hypersexual, like everything is centered around that. And I was just like, I was raised very conservative Christian, and I'm not, if we have sex, I'm going to go to hell kind of, thing. And so we broke it off, and she would come to my work and wait outside my work for me to come out. I mean, complete role reversal as typically you would see, with a male to female. But it really got bad to where I finally just had to say, look, if you come to my house or my work, I'm going to have you arrested. And so then she started mailing letters and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, mailing letters.
Yeah.
What do you do to these ladies?
I mean, I guess you could say when you've had the best, why settle for the rest, right?
Yes.
So that was about the time that I moved to North Carolina to go into college. And so being 1,200 miles away from her really helped that problem exponentially.
Yeah, I bet. How did you pick up on her there?
She picked up on me. It was that kind of thing. I've always been kind of the modest guy that, relationships wasn't always the highest priority in my life. And I was married at the age of 27, which is uncommon, for a first marriage. So I really did hold out to make sure that I got what I was looking for and knew that everything was the way that I wanted. And that's one thing that I try to share with people, before you ever even start dating. I think it's important for us to make a list, maybe not physically, but in our mind. What are we looking for? What do we really look for in a partner? The problem is that the psychology of attraction is such that when we get attracted, that list goes out the window and we don't care anymore. Mm-hmm. And then that leads us into broken relationships, broken hearts, and in some cases, even domestic violence and those kind of issues that you could have picked up on prior in the beginning of this relationship.
Do you believe that there's a smell attraction? There
is actually. Women are attracted to sweat. Men sweat. And the problem is, it's not the sweat that stinks when you smell BO. It's the organicness of the sweat against your skin that actually smells. So being in a gym, I'm sure that your hormones could just be crazy with the smell of sweat there. And so there is that smell, especially if they are more masculine than others. There is that dominant hormonal. I can't think of is it androgen is the hormone that men put off in their sweat that women are attracted to?
I don't know.
Don't quote me on that because somebody on TikTok will be asking to see my license again. Last week, there was this woman on there and she's like, I'm a clinical psychologist. What you're saying is completely wrong and I demand to see your license. I was like, okay, watch this. You're really going to like this. Block.
That easy.
I make most of my videos here in my office, and if you can see over my head all of my degrees there. I don't need to focus in on them for you to feel like you mean something to somebody.
Yeah.
That's another problem within dating is that we feel like we need to validate ourselves, and you don't owe anybody an explanation for anything. Even in marriage. you really don't owe your partner an explanation for anything that you do, because you are the one responsible for your happiness, not your partner. And I think that's where a lot of marriages fall apart, is that we have this idea that, we go in and it's a Hallmark plot movie of the perfect wedding and everything. And then you get married and it all falls apart, and you get this resentment because you're not getting what you used to get from your partner. And you've realized that through the whole dating experience, your happiness was coming from this person instead of what you enjoy. And so it's important for us to be independent of each other and not be codependent for our happiness on our partner too. So when you mix in all of that, it's not good. I tell people this too, because I do premarital counseling, and amazingly, because I'm a minister, I pastor in a Baptist church, but here's what happens.
How long are your services? 3 to 10 hours. How do they fall? What are
30 to 45 minutes.
I'm like,
Drive through church. That's my church.
I'm like, I should have packed a snack. I'm
Stomach's growling.
No, we kind of, we don't drag it out. An educated person can give a talk in shorter time than somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about.
Oh.
So when you give a talk, if it's long, then you can inflect that they really aren't as intelligent as they think they are. So one thing that I try to tell people is this: if you meet somebody new and you just fall head over heels and you find yourself texting them every single day, talking on the phone for hours a day, going out to lunch or to dinner with them more than 2 times a week, break it off. And the reason is because you have put your happiness and your securities in somebody that you don't even really know. And it is destined to fail. It is destined.
Man.
Are you listening to this?
So much sense of everything I'm doing wrong. Oh my God.
Well, I hope you have good insurance is all I can say. But when you do that, I mean, think about this. I wouldn't let a stranger in my home that I didn't know and show them where, all of my valuables were. But when we look at our bodies and our lives, that's essentially what we are doing when we meet somebody and then immediately just start every day pouring something into them about our life. And I think that social media has given us this thought that that's okay. And it's really not. I mean, we have to protect our privacy. And if that person doesn't respect your privacy, then you need to get rid of them too. So the other key is, if you start seeing a guy and he texts you and you don't text him back, if he cuts you off and feels like you've ghosted him after a couple of hours, be done with him. Just be done. And I would not suggest to anyone, man or woman, to ghost anybody. I mean, if you're done with them, tell them that you're done with them and don't lead them on. Just be honest. We're supposed to be adults here. And there's no room for that. So, I mean, there are a lot of key things. Another thing is have him to take you out somewhere to eat. Notice if he has an opinion, ladies, notice if he has an opinion where you should want to go to eat. If he has that opinion about where you should want to go to eat, that's a red flag that you could be dealing with a narcissist, because they have to project what they want in every situation. Now, if you say to them, well, what would you like to eat? Now, expect for them to give their input. Here's another thing that I tell people that's probably not the most honest thing to do, but it's going to tell you a lot. Order your food, whether it comes out exactly the way you ordered it or not, tell that person that the food order was wrong. Notice if they will say to you, well, that's exactly what you ordered, or if they will immediately tell the waiter or the waitress that they were wrong. If they say to you, are you sure that's not what you ordered? Keep them, because you want somebody to be honest with you. Whether it's going to hurt your feelings or not, you want somebody that's honest. If they immediately call the waiter or the waitress over and give them crap and they don't even know that it's wrong, red flag. Red flag.
We just read a book of red flags.
However they treat this waiter or waitress is how they're going to treat you after they get to know you.
I feel like that's a lot of the mask situation too. It's like if you're going to wear your mask around people, that's a very respectful thing to do. And if they're not going to do it, it's like, that's very telling, sir. It's very telling on you.
Well, I have advised all of my patients do not get in a relationship during the pandemic because you can't see their face. You don't know what you're going to get when they take that mask off. I mean,
everyone looks good when you just see their eyeballs.
Looks good when you got a ball cap and a mask on.
Yeah, I've checked out way too many guys when they had hats and masks on. I'm like, hey, no, Joelle, don't be fooled.
So how did you meet your wife?
Okay. So, crazy story. I just, as I said, I'm a pastor. And so I moved back to Arkansas. I was pastoring a church, and I just felt that I was going to marry a woman, and it was very specific, named Jennifer, and was going to be a nurse. And I was like, I have lost my mind because that wasn't going to happen. And so, foolish me, I went on MySpace and I searched Jennifers who were nurses within 150 miles.
I'm in New York. We go like 0.2, and that's it.
I understand. But I was in rural Oklahoma where there wasn't even a Walmart, or there was a gas station and no stoplights. So you go 150 miles. Yeah. And so I sent out messages to all of these Jennifers who are nurses. That was probably around 200 Jennifers. And I was like, hey, I'm new to the area, saw you on MySpace, thought you looked attractive, wondered if you would like to get lunch sometime.
I love it.
One Jennifer responded, and I married her 8 months later.
Wow.
How many weeks later?
8 months later.
8 months. 8 months.
Oh, I was like,
No.
He's not that crazy.
No, not that crazy. But the thing about it is that we dated for probably the first month, and then I broke it off for about 4 months. I was like, this is crazy. I shouldn't have done this. That it was kind of one of those things. And then I got a scare about having thyroid cancer. Mm-hmm. And she was a nurse, and I was in the ER by myself because my parents lived several hours from where I was living. And I just texted her, and I was like, hey, I'm in the ER. She didn't ask any questions. She immediately came to the ER. And that's when I knew. That's when I knew that the real care was there. At 2 a.m, somebody who barely even knows you, that you've kind of broken it off with after 4 or 5 dates, then you know. And so it wasn't long after that we got engaged and then married.
So do you recommend I do that?
No.
Okay. I was just thinking, what name do I really think I'm going to end up with? It's not Brad. I don't think it's Brad.
Yeah.
No.
How did you ask her to marry you?
We were on a cruise with her family. And so, she tells it this funny story. I had just graduated and I didn't have my license yet. And so I was broke. I mean, broke. And she paid for me to go on this cruise with her family. And she tells people, the only reason you proposed to me on that cruise was so that you didn't have to pay me back for it. So she still holds that over my head to today, that I never paid her back for that cruise. We were somewhere between Cozumel and Jamaica one night, and I proposed to her on the ship about 10 o'clock at night.
I think this is the most wholesome episode we've ever done. I'm like, I feel like this is a hug of an episode.
Good.
So you guys have kids? How have you guys been doing during this pandemic?
We have one son, and he is 5 years old. We adopted him when he was 1 year old. Myself nor my wife can have children, which I thought was very unique too, because, either the male would be sterile, the female couldn't have children. And we both found out after we were married that we couldn't have children, both of us. Mm-hmm. And so that was very unique too. And that was another telling sign that, hey, this is right. That there's these things. So we adopted Luke. He has a heart condition, so he will have to have a transplant at some point in time in his life. And the reason we were selected to be his parents was because the judge ordered that both parents had to have a medical background. And so that's like unheard of. We were approved for adoption, and then 5 days later we got him. Just the cutest, smartest little boy. He goes to daycare at the hospital, and they never close the hospital. So daycare. So he's not missed any school. My wife is a nurse. She's not missed any work. I've done all of my stuff by telemed. So our life really hasn't changed. I mean, wow. It really, when I go out in public, I'm like, people are wearing masks, and it's, I'm not desensitized to it yet. It's still very new. I am doing counseling with two physicians who are working in the Bronx Hospital in New York who have experienced the brunt of this. And my heart breaks for them because this was so unexpected, so unprepared for. In all of this, counselors and therapists sometimes can get compassion fatigue. And so I kind of have had to really focus on family when I'm at home and not carry all of when you have a doctor that you're doing counseling with, a grown man who is weeping over telemedicine because he lost 80 patients that day, it's hard to not take that home with you. Yeah. And so, we just got to encourage each other. We got to keep going. We got to keep moving. And, for those that have had failed relationships, you got to keep going out there. You just got to keep making it and applying yourself. Because if you don't, you're not going to find what you're looking for. Now, in the case of someone who has been married 3 times, and how many engagements? 7. Did you hear how she went 7?
Yeah.
Here would be my suggestion for you. Quit looking.
I have 100%.
Quit worrying about being in a relationship. Quit worrying about having to have somebody. Because what's going to happen is that then you are going to focus on your goals, your dreams, your aspirations. And that's, once again, in that Weird Psychology Fact, part 36, is that women who are successful do have problems finding people of similar status. And that is because not only do men feel like they need to be the superior in the relationship, but also because men typically aren't there in that walk of your success. So they can't fully appreciate everything that you have done to get where you're at. And so what happens is these women who are successful, when you stop looking and you start focusing on your goals, then the right man's going to come along and he's going to appreciate what you are doing to build your life. And that is the person that you want in your life, is someone who values you, who sees you as a co-equal, and is passionate about your passion, not necessarily about what you do, but is passionate that you have a passion to do something and supports you in that. And that's the key. That's the advice I would give to anyone that has had failed relationships, is to quit looking, focus on your passion, whatever that passion may be, focus on it. The right person will come along who sees your passion and will appreciate it. And that's the person that you want.
Well, I really want to, my whole life, I've always thought I had like the vision like you did, but not of a Jennifer. That's my middle name. But I've always wanted to adopt foster children. I also cannot have children. So I was like, oh, it's destined. I even told my doctor when I was 5, I was like, I'm going to adopt kids. And I've held on to that. And I feel like now is the time to do it. But I also feel like I haven't looked for a man because I don't know many men that want to do that.
So here's the thing. You're in New York, is that right?
Yeah.
I don't know about the laws in New York, but in the state of Arkansas, a single parent can adopt a child. And we adopted our son through the Department of Health and Human Services through the state. And so you can do that. You can foster children as a single adult. So when you foster and adopt a child, what would be the difference in having an adopted child and having a biological child as a single mother looking for a partner? There wouldn't be any difference.
There's not any difference, except for a lot of kids that are in foster care come from abusive homes and are dealing with a lot of trauma. And so they need a little more care. There's a little more to that.
Which then when you find someone who is a prospective partner, you would over time share this with them. And if they weren't comfortable with that and they didn't interact well, you're done.
Right.
Yeah. You've probably seen the meme. It says, women, if you want to change a man, he better have a diaper, because that's the only thing you can change.
Oh, yeah.
That's the literal truth.
Yeah.
Is you're not going to change that person. So if they don't meet that criteria that you've set up on the front end, get rid of them. And, don't feel bad about it either, because you're the one that has to be happy. You're the one responsible for that.
You said earlier that there are signs of domestic abuser. Can you share some of those signs?
So the first thing that you want to look at is ask that person how their relationship with their parents are. If their parents were abusive, that's a red flag. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are, but you have to remember that that's how problems were dealt with towards them as a child. And so that's how they're going to project most of the time their response as an adult. You know, I don't think it's intrusive. All you need to really know is somebody's first and last name and about how old they are, and you can do a criminal background check. You know,
I do it every time.
You do?
I do. I have an app. It's been verified, and I look up everything about them.
Absolutely.
I don't know who these guys are.
That's right. You don't. And so you need to look at those things. If when they talk to you, okay, so there's a lot of nonverbal signs. You'll see another one of my TikToks. It talks about when people cry, if it comes from the left side of the eye first, then it's anger. If it comes from the right eye, that is joy. There are also nonverbal things when you talk about kinesthetic interviewing, of where if you look up, if you've asked somebody something and they stop to respond and they look up, they're recalling. If they look down, they're fabricating. So you can look for these nonverbal cues when you ask these questions. When somebody, if you ask them a question and they kind of squint their eye, specifically their left eye, most likely they're not telling the truth. So there are all of these different ways that you can be a human lie detector, and you can Google kinesthetic interviewing. The FBI, law enforcement agencies use it all the time in interrogation to be able to tell if somebody's telling the truth or not. So if somebody is habitually lying to you about things that really don't even matter, they're probably going to be abusive. If someone has lied to you about, what they had for breakfast, they're probably going to be abusive. And that's probably not somebody you want in your life. And so when you build this, and then, once again, going back to, do they have to input their opinion anytime that they ask you what you want? That's, a signs of a classical narcissist. And
yeah, what are other signs?
We've been on a roll with narcissists lately.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is
Get
what
us
I'm
off that roll, Dr. Brian. Get us off that roll.
That is what I'm asked the most on TikTok is, how do I deal with my narcissistic husband? You get a divorce. That's how you deal with a narcissistic husband. They will not change. Most of the, if you look up narcissistic personality disorder, the stats in America, they are very low. And it says that it's very rare. And that's because typically the only way people are diagnosed with NPD is because they're in prison and they've had a psych evaluation because they've killed somebody. It's just that's where you get that diagnosis. So when you look at a narcissist, they're always worried about their reputation and how they're perceived. They gaslight, which don't know if you're familiar with that term. Which typically means, if you hadn't have done this, I wouldn't have had to do this. So they project that you're the problem, not me the problem. Now, something else that we don't think about a lot of times is the difference between a narcissist and a sociopath. Where a sociopath, it doesn't matter who it's about. Where the narcissist has all these traits and it's about them, the sociopath doesn't care who it's about. But they will still control in these same manners. And then you have the covert narcissist where they're the victim. They're always the victim. And I tell people, whether they have a legitimate reason to be the victim or not, you cannot live as a victim your entire life and be successful at anything. At some point in time, you're going to have to realize, hey, this did happen to me, but this doesn't define me. And so I'm bigger than that. And if you're in a relationship where somebody is just constantly the victim, that's a big red flag, that they could either be abusive, that they could be a narcissist, they could be a sociopath, and that you don't need to be with those people. Now, I do want to add a disclaimer here. These are broad generalizations. The other video that I did on TikTok about depression, where I said depression is a result of overthinking. Great day, you would have thought that I said the sky was purple. I mean, just people come out of the woodwork and said, so you're telling me that being abused as a child and being depressed is, and I said, that is not what I said, because depression as a symptom is overthinking. Depression as a diagnosis is a chemical imbalance. And so there are a lot of things about mental health that we have a very small picture about and very broad generalizations that we really need to not label somebody as opposed to look for all the signs. And if the signs are there, get out.
Yeah. My mom was very abusive, but I haven't touched a fly. And I wasn't offended when you said, don't date someone who's been abused.
Yeah.
But I will stand up for all of my people. I will mean mug if I need to. That doesn't do anything.
The thing about it is that, just like I had mentioned at the beginning, when we're attracted, we kind of let all of these red flags go. And if we're attracted enough, we'll say, well, he hit me, but I did make him mad, and it really is my fault, and he's not a violent person. No. Get out, get away. And dealing with domestic violence, you probably know about the domestic violence wheel of continuum of where, there is this hit, and then it goes back to love, and it goes to hitting, and then it goes to sexual assault, and, it just comes all the way back around. And I've told people there's a fine line between love and murder. I mean, it is a very fine line where that can be crossed very easily. And if you're seeing these signs, get out. And now, I also am not saying that these people who didn't see the signs and didn't get out deserved what they got, because they did.
Right.
But so many times we just get, you've heard before, love is blind. And it really is. When you're in that infatuation state, we let things go that we would have never let go.
I find that I give that kind of advice to friends. I'm like, well, you said this, but when you start adding but into when you're explaining this person, that's probably something that you should get out from. But yet I rarely take my own advice. It's good to hear you say this. Yeah. I'm going to take your advice.
None of us are good at taking our own advice.
No.
I have PTSD from an accident. I was a police officer for 6 years, and I was involved in an officer-involved shooting. And I have PTSD from that. And I see a therapist every Thursday at 2:00. And I'm not ashamed to say that. And he literally says to me, so if somebody came to you and this is what they said, what would you tell them? Mm-hmm. So I tell him, and he's like, so why are you paying me if you already know the answer?
Right.
And I'm saying, because I have to hear it from you. I can't, I can't internalize and say, okay, this is what I need to do, because there's so much power coming from someone else's voice.
Yes.
Agreed. I do this with Joelle. I think that's why we're such good friends, is because we are extremely honest with one another, to the point where I'm like, I'm about to say something and it might hurt. You have to hear it.
Painful truths, but it comes from a good place.
You can see your underwear when you bend down to do squats. I'm just going to say.
But even in finding somebody who you might see as a partner, if they have that blatant truth, that's really what you want. It may hurt your feelings a little bit, but hey, at least they're honest. Right. At least that they will tell you what they think, and that's so important. If you sugarcoat everything, you're just pandering, and it's not going to work out.
Yeah. I remember with my ex-husband, I just wanted him to have an opinion, and I'd share things like hoping that he would give some feedback, and he was always just, whatever you want. Yeah, you're right. And I was like, I don't need that. That's not helping me. I want you to talk it out with me, or say, maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe look at it this way. Like, I want people to have an opinion. It's important. It's important for them.
Well, but the problem with that may actually be biological, in that women speak about 50,000 words a day.
What?
Where men speak about 12,000 words a day. And it's psychology. I mean, I'm not making this up. And the way
I'm like 100,000.
Yeah. The way a man's brain works, he compartmentalizes things. And I've got to put this up before I can pull out of this. So if he's watching a football game and you come along and say, honey, how do you feel about this? He's got to repack that football game and pull out the emotional and say, hey, what's going on? Well, a woman's brain is like a big ball of yarn. I mean, it can go here, go there, and go back and forth. And so while you were saying that, I'm thinking it's very important for genders to understand that there are biological things that you must do, in that if you want to have a conversation with your husband or your partner or your potential partner is for you to get their attention and say, hey, I want your opinion. Can we talk about this now? That way they have recompartmentalized to where they're at and they can give an honest opinion. My wife does this all the time and it drives me crazy. We can be watching TV, a commercial be on, not a word said. The minute that the show comes back on, here comes the questions. I mean, I'm going, okay, let me pause the TV so I can hear what you're saying. And it just happens that way. But there has to be that communication, but it also has to be reciprocal. A man needs to know that you're going to tell him what you think and that you're not just so overly infatuated with him that you're going to agree with everything that he says so that he doesn't go away. And that's the problem that a lot of women have is that, this is a guy and he just seems like the perfect Romeo. He's my knight in shining armor and I can't let him get away. And I have a saying about that is that if you believe a man is your knight in shining armor and has no flaw, you will eventually find out that he's just a cold booger on a paper plate.
Cold booger on a paper plate.
Yeah. I read a doctoral thesis one time, and I wish I had a copy of it. And the title was "What to Do When Your Knight in Shining Armor Turns Out to Be a Jerk Wrapped in Tinfoil." We get so caught up and infatuated that these silly little things we just let go by, and then before you know it, we're in a broken relationship, or we're ending in divorce, or we have children together, and that's another thing. And I'm probably talking way too much here.
No, I love it.
If you are having problems with your partner and they suggest that you have a child, that is a classic narcissist, because they will then project, well, we have to do it for the child. And so they will project that victimology onto a baby. If you are in a relationship and you're having problems and they want you to take out a credit card, or they want you to buy a house, or they want you to rent a new apartment, do not do it. That is classical narcissism of trying to mend the relationship back together because there's this new thing, but what they're doing is they're tying you back in to control you and manipulate you for a period of time. I don't know how many people I've heard say before, and I don't know if either, I know that you don't have children. I'm pointing at you like you can see me pointing at you.
Neither of us. I don't have children either. I just have a dog.
Okay. So, I hear a lot of people say when I say, well, it sounds like you need to just go ahead and end the marriage. And they'll say, well, I'm going to stick it out for the kids. Mm-hmm. So you're going to allow your child to endure this emotional and personal attacks for the rest of their childhood instead of getting away. And so really people don't look at it that way. Well, we want to stay a nuclear family so that we can raise our children together and they can say they have, well, while narcissism is genetic, it is a learned behavior too. Mm-hmm. So you could be, by having your child raised by a narcissist, be making a narcissist. What seems to be good for the child isn't always good for the child. Your responsibility for your happiness, and you've got to take care of you before you take care of anybody else.
Right.
Can I ask you about being a minister and recommending divorce, and also how does that?
Well, I tell people my religion doesn't get in the way of my psychology, but my psychology sometimes gets in the way of my religion. Mm-hmm. When it comes to a biblical aspect of divorce, there are two things: is fornication and abuse that we see. The Bible doesn't specifically say that it has to be physical abuse. And so to me, any personal, emotional, sexual, physical abuse is well within those confines. And I say this, I would rather be single and happy than married and miserable. When we talk about God's grace is sufficient to cover all of our sin. So, get out, just get out and don't deal with that. You don't have to deal with that. That doesn't have to define you. And it certainly doesn't have to be your bondage for the rest of your life.
I love this so much.
Yeah. You only got one life to live.
That's right.
Yeah, crazy. Do you guys have plans on adopting more children, or just going to have little Luke?
We are still open to adoption. My wife wants a baby, and that's very rare that you're actually able to, at least through the state. Because when a child's taken into custody, you've got 90 days for this, 90 days for that. And so by the time it's all done, I mean, it's even rare to get a 1-year-old. And so our adoption with Luke was very unique in that he was born with a heart defect. He had open heart surgery at 3 months old. The abuse happened 2 days after his open heart surgery. They were taking him home from the hospital, and evidently his dad has an anger issue, and Luke wouldn't be quiet. So the dad jerked him the car seat out of the car.
I'm sorry, your child was abused?
Oh, yes.
Your baby was abused.
Yes. And so he jerked him out of the car seat by his left leg and shook him upside down while he's strapped in the car seat. So Luke then had a broken tib-fib in his leg and 2 brain bleeds and just had open heart surgery. So they did not take him to the doctor for 7 days. And I've seen pictures of him. I mean, it's just, as a good Baptist, I have to forgive him. But as a dad, I want to kill this guy.
Of course.
And so he was taken into custody, and the mother, Luke's mom, had an abortion the day that they took him to, left the hospital and the social worker to go have an abortion, and then came back.
Are you kidding?
I'm just going, what is going on here? And so the dad was arrested. The foster mother that took care of Luke, it was one of those, I mean, this is a whole other podcast, I'm sure, but she called me the day that we took him and said, Dr. Sheppard, do you understand what you're getting yourself into? And I said, you did say Dr. Sheppard, so I'm sure that you're aware that I'm pretty educated as to what this is. And she finally just said on the phone, she said, well, I'm just going to be honest with you. I can't afford to lose him. And I'm going, so then I start reading the medical files. She has neglected him medically. She told doctor the foster mother. She told the doctor she wasn't going to comply with certain things that they suggested. And that ultimately led to, after I filed a police report and finding all this, because don't want to say I was vindictive, but I might have been a little vindictive after what she said.
Rightly so.
And so I turned it all over to state police, and she was arrested for felony child abuse, and she's in prison.
Yeah.
So, the dad all the charges against him was dismissed.
You're kidding.
So, no. He got so many continuances because he was expecting another child.
Oh, God.
Finally just got wrapped up in the system and was dismissed.
This is another reason why I want to be a foster parent, because this is not even unusual. This is such a typical foster parent situation.
It's all too common.
After she was arrested and there was an investigation done, we found she was from Wisconsin. And people always make fun of me for the way I say Wisconsin, but I'm from Arkansas. On that video, if you look through the comments, how many people said, we don't even trust that he's a real doctor because he said simular instead of similar. I'm like, I'm from Arkansas. Like, give me a break. So we found out that she had 4 children in her custody that had died in her home that were foster children. Now, once, maybe.
4.
But 4 times, no.
Oh, my gosh, that's sickening.
Oh, my God.
So she did admit that she left him upstairs in his crib and played The Wizard of Oz on repeat. And to this day, if we're somewhere, like we were at a wedding at the reception and they started playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, like Luke froze. Like almost like a silent seizure, just froze. And so I'm sure we will have to work through those issues, and thankful that he has a dad who's a clinical psychologist who will be able to work through those things because, state paid insurance doesn't really pay for mental health.
He's so lucky to have you guys. Like that, there is a reason behind that. That's for sure.
We're lucky to have him, and he is just, and you can see he's on 2 or 3 of my TikToks. He did the weird psychology fact for me that it only takes 4 seconds for someone to fall in love.
Oh.
And a lot of people say, well, it didn't take 4 seconds for us to fall in love with him.
Yeah.
I don't know what eyes I started to cry out of first.
Well, I hope it's not the first time that you've cried on one of these podcasts, because then I'm going to feel really bad.
We're happy tears. Oh, it's good.
Oh my
I
God.
did notice that they come out of the left eye. So
Yeah, what line are they coming out of?
They're both. Oh,
they started in the left. That's where you wipe first.
okay.
At least that's what my note here says.
Thank you so much for coming on. This was so much more of an episode than I thought.
Yeah.
I really thought you were going to be a dud before, but now,
You're amazing. I feel like I'm well equipped to go on this journey and work on myself. Like,
yes.
I really do. I feel very strong right now. It's good.
Yeah. And I feel like I know that it just gave me another sign that I am supposed to foster, and gave me some restored hope in Christianity also. So that was did not think that was going to come out of this one. So where can everyone find you? Let's talk about your podcast. Give all the plugs. Give your TikTok. Can we get your TikTok and your Instagram and everything to be the same? I used to be in marketing. So let's talk about branding.
Well, Brian on Instagram is taken. And so I had to figure out a way. Now, can you change it on TikTok? I don't even know if you can change it after you've had it. But yeah, that was kind of the issue. But even like my website is the Doc Brian, because Doc Brian is taken, and I wasn't going to pay like the $700 to anyway. So I also add a disclaimer here. If y'all didn't pay for this advice, so if it doesn't work for you, I'm not liable. So, but anyway,
as long as you don't send me a bill, we're good.
Yeah, no, I won't
call you in 10 years and be like, I'm still single.
And I'll say, good for you. You took my advice and you've not settled.
We're waiting.
So my TikTok is Doc Brian, DocBrien. My podcast, we just started recording, and there are 2 podcasts. It's Doc Talks, as in TikTok, Doc, D-O-C, Talk, T-O-K. And there's a Doc Talk DX, which DX is the medical abbreviation for diagnosis. So in the Doc Talk DX, we just talk about diagnosis. Like we put one up last week that's about depression, 9 types of depression, which there are a lot more than 9 types, but there are 9 types of basic depression. And so we're going to be doing those as diagnoses. And then yesterday I put out our very first Doc Talk. And what I do in that was I kind of go back to reinforce that as social media users, we put up this front that, we all have problems, we all have situations. And so I give professionals this platform to tell their story and how it's not as easy as it looks, and we struggled through school, and, we weren't 4.0 students getting into med school or getting into a doctoral program or getting into grad school. We have $300,000 worth of debt. We make $150,000 a year, all of those kind of things. And so, yeah. But when you're passionate about it, does it really matter how much debt you have? Does it really matter how much money you make if you're passionate about it? Anyway, Doc Talks is on my YouTube channel. I don't have enough subscribers yet to have an actual, whatever, it's a shortcut username. So if you put in there Doc Brian, I'm about the first one that pops up, and you can see Doc Talks.
Here's a tip for everyone. If you have multiple links to put up in your bio of your social media, you can go to Linktree and start a free account, and then you can put multiple links there. So we'll put that up in our Happy Never After bio also.
You can also just go to my website, thedocbrian.com, and it has all of my social media.
Oh, there you go.
Now, one thing that I do, and I've tried to do, is if you send me a question by Messenger, I will answer your question. You may not like my answer, as I did one TikTok where this guy asked me a question, I answered it, and he went off on me. So I did what any professional would do. I made a TikTok about it and showed exactly what he said and then blocked him. So it's, the thing about psychology is if you want to get better, there's something wrong. And if you don't expose the wrong, then you're never going to get better. You're not always going to like what somebody has to say. But I will answer. Send me a message on Instagram or on TikTok or through the website, and I will answer.
Beautiful. And we will tag
you so much.
Our Instagram on Happy Never After. Joelle, where can people find you?
On Instagram, it's slapped.on.smile. Joelle, go forth.
Yep, we're about 1 week out from living in a trailer. Please subscribe to both Doc Talk and to Happy Never After. Share it with your friends. Share everything. Rate, review, subscribe. Whatever. What else is there? I'm not sure. Love each other. Lift each other up, and follow me directly at Mara and Merrick. Thanks, you guys. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Love you all. Later.
Bye.